Yes, hello and welcome. My name is Paul Dudman and I am the archivist for here at the University of East London. Welcome to my session for the Law and Ware Situated Practice Project. I'm sorry I couldn't be with you today in person, but I really hope you will find this session interesting, and I'm very happy for you to sort of share questions and insights with me, both in the team Padlet and also by email after the session. Okay, so what will this session include? For this particular presentation, I'm looking to focus on several aspects of our archival work here at the University of East London. So during this session, we will aim to explore the range and scope of the archives that we hold here at UEL. We will look at and sort of consider the role and power of life histories and how they exist within the archival environment. We will consider the use of testimonies as a means of bringing humanity back into the archival space, and the role of ethics in how we look to engage with and work with participants in terms of how we create what we deem to be a living archive. We will also introduce some examples of the different kinds of archival materials that we hold in the archive, which I've made available for you on a special section of our Living Refugee Archive online portal, which we'll come to slightly later in this presentation. Okay, so what do we mean by archives? I often kind of like to start these sessions by thinking about archives as stories. As Schwartz and Cook indicated in his first quotation, archives can often represent the basis and validation of the stories that we tell ourselves, the storytelling narratives that give cohesion and meaning to individuals, groups, and societies. Through this term, the authors indicate that archives can have the power potentially to present a narrative determined by the documentary evidence that has survived, and which helps to empower a certain representation of communities and individuals through the medium of language. Within this context, archives can incorporate individual notions of memory and identity, shared histories, community, and individual and shared notions of sort of engagement and how sort of communities can coexist with each other. But we also have to consider both what is included in the archive and also what is not included, and think about those archival silences where sort of perhaps evidence from a particular event or particular community is not necessarily always available within the archival space. But what of those stories that never make it into the archive? Those lives deemed too unimportant or mundane to be represented in the wider corpus of our shared history. How do we record and document these stories, this history? How do we bring these people's experiences into the fabric of history, and how do we ensure and empower their voices to be heard? What methods and tools are available to us to undertake this work, and what should we consider when looking to document the lived experience of an individual? I'll come to this in more depth in a minute, but one of the core aspects of the work that we've undertaken at UEL is around the documentation of archives relating to refugee and forced migration issues, and to think about how we engage with both individuals who have sought asylum, and also sort of how it feels to be a refugee and how we can look to sort of represent some of those lived experiences within the archival context. With this in mind, I wanted to just to share with you these two quotes from the 2021 book written by sort of, Professor Vicky Squire and colleagues called Reclaiming Migration, Voices from Europe's Migrant Crisis. This highlights, I think, sort of one of the key, both of these quotes highlight one of the key aspects of why we try to undertake this kind of archiving work. So the first quote here is taken from a female refugee from Syria who's currently living in the Greek island of Kos. What we want is for our voice to be heard in the world. We just want our voice to be heard in the world. The second quote is from an Iraqi man currently living in Istanbul. Yeah, am I not useless? Anything that is useless is thrown out. When I see that I'm useless in my country, useless in Europe, useless in other countries, then who am I? A hidden pronoun. In the Arabic language, we call it a hidden pronoun, an invisible subject. This kind of, I think, is captured, like, both, on the one hand, the importance of sort of agency and sort of the empowerment of individual voices, but also it considers how the potential for individuals and sort of individual groups as well to be underrepresented within the wider sort of historical record, and think about how we both approach that and engage with that to ensure that their stories are heard and they do become a visible subject. Okay, so to introduce you to some of the archival collections that we have here at the University of East London. I've been the archivist here for almost 19 years now, and over that time we've developed a number of sort of archival collections focusing on sort of different subject areas. So as I've just mentioned already, we have a major part of our collecting work is around the issue of refugee and forced migration issues. So we now have a number of individual named collections on these issues, including, in terms of physical collections, the Refugee Council Archive, the Northern Refugee Centre Archive, an audiovisual collection from the United Nations High Commission for Refugees, and a collection of materials from the Council for At-Risk Academics. Linked to that, we also now hold the British Olympic Association Archive and Library, which dates from 1906 through to the present day, and documents the history of British, both history of Team GB and also British engagement with the wider Olympic movement. We have the East Side Community Heritage Oral History Collection, which documents over 4,000 oral histories, documenting the history of East London, which have been collected over a 20-year period. We also have an East London Studies collection, the archive of the university itself, the Hackney Empire Theatre Archive, documenting the history of the Hackney Empire as a working theatre, and also a collection of football fanzines. Yeah, so these here you can see the up-to-date list of the refugee collections that we have, and we also hope to be working on a project with the Association of Ukrainian Women soon that helps bring their collection into the archive as well. Okay, so just to give you a bit of background in terms of the archive and why we're undertaking this work. So the Refugee Council itself was established as originally as two separate organisations following the creation of the United Nations Convention on the Status of Refugees in 1951. Their archive was established soon after this period, that now contains a wealth of information, including correspondence files, minutes, meetings, case files, and sort of fundraising and sort of promotional campaigns as well. It also contains a thematic special collection of published books and journals, reports and grey literature, incorporating working papers, conference papers, leaflets, newsletters, field reports, statistical data, press cuttings, and also audiovisual materials. In total, in this collection alone, we estimate it contains in excess of 35,000 items, which makes it perhaps one of the largest collections, archival collections in the UK, which specifically focuses on refugee and forced migration issues. In recent years, we've been focusing also on the collection of oral history archives, which for us we felt has been an important development in archiving work that we do in order to encourage, to enable us to be able to start to document the actual lived experiences of communities and individuals who've been through either a refugee or an exile movement, and be able to sort of talk about, to be able to provide a space in which these communities can tell their story, that ensure that their voices are heard. So we now have a growing collection of oral history materials, as you can see from this side, including the Voices of Kosovo in Manchester Oral History Archive, which is a project documenting the arrival of Kosovans in Manchester following the Balkan Wars in the 1990s. Healing the Wounds was an oral history project which documented the Irish community in South East London, whilst we were able to work closely with the Hawaiian Society, also in Manchester, on a project to document the local Chinese community in the city. And as I briefly mentioned earlier, we also have the East Side Community Heritage Collection, which also includes specific projects on Somali seafarers, Ugandan Asians, and refugees from the Hungarian Revolution. This is a slide I just wanted to share with you, which gives a single snapshot of the Voices of Kosovo archive, and a quotation from one of the Kosovans who was interviewed as part of that oral history project. I'll come back to this later when we talk about the resources that I've made available for you on the Living Refugee Archive. Another aspect of the work that we've started to do with the archive is to revisit what we actually mean by the concept of an archive, and to start to think about not only documents but also audiovisual and sort of material culture as well, to start to think about sort of how we perhaps look at artifacts and what stories that objects can tell in support of a particular history. So the photo of the shoes here was one of a number of photos taken by the photographer Gideon Mendel during his time in the former Calais, the former Calais jungle refugee camp, where he looked to sort of recall the history of the refugees who was living in the camp at that time, not through direct interviewing, but through the photographs of the objects that had been left behind in the camp. So this is a very interesting approach to look at sort of how material culture can represent the experiences of their journey from their home country to to the Calais camp. More recently, and in a similar, but slightly different approach, Dr. Rachel Kiddy has recently launched the online virtual exhibition called Yet Made in Migration, which also explores the role of material culture in situations of forced migration. And this is well worth a look at the sort of link I've provided in this slide to get an idea of potentially how these kind of narratives can be visualized in a slightly different way. Okay, this was just a quick quote that I wanted to share with you in relation to the experiences of some of the refugees in the Calais jungle. One of the photographs that Mendel took was of a number of painted tear gas canisters, which, as he said, these canisters were collected on the 28th of October in order to testify to both the police brutality in the Calais jungle, but also to the resourcefulness and resilience of the camp residents, turning a symbol of oppression into an art form, a representation, narrative of their journeys and experiences, allowing their voices to be heard through art, whilst turning a symbol of oppression into a symbol of hope and agency. Okay, so I think for the next few slides, I wanted to sort of share with you some of the ideas that we've been working on recently around disrupting traditional archival paradigms. For many people, when you mention the word archive, they will perhaps automatically think of documents, manuscripts, paper, perhaps old stuff and dust, sort of, a small archive tucked away in the corner somewhere that people rarely visit. This is something we've been looking to try to challenge in recent years through our concept of what we like to call living archives, which is an approach that we're sort of currently working on to think about how we document and preserve the sort of the histories of the present, the sort of history of sort of lived experiences which are taking place in the present. So just wanted to. So this could, for example, the taking of oral histories or working together with different communities to preserve the history of what's happening in the current context. So I just wanted to share with you a couple of examples of projects we're actively involved with at the moment. So the first one I'd like to share is a project with the Vietnamese performance artist called Moi Tran, where we're looking to document the community histories of the Vietnamese community in Hackney through the medium of performance and song. So I'll just quickly skip to the next slide. This is in essence the project that we worked on, is to create what we call a civic voice archive, a project which we want community members to engage with to contribute to an ongoing archive of songs and poems in East and Southeast Asian languages and dialects. So the idea of this is not only to preserve the lived community experiences of the Vietnamese communities in Hackney, but also to preserve the spoken culture of how these stories are passed down from generation to yet generation through the use of language, song, and documenting individual dialects. So in a way, we like to think this is a different way of archiving community history, which is not reliant on the sort of the collection of documents, but actually is perhaps more responsive to how the community would almost self-archive their own sort of shared histories. So this will very much be a community-focused, sort of community-driven archiving project. In a similar fashion, we're also currently working with the Chilean exile community in London, where we're looking to create an exile archive of memory, reflecting on the experiences of Chileans as political prisoners following the 1973 military coup in Chile. This began back in 2018 as an in-person exhibition where we'd been able to bring together over 100 individual handcrafted items brought together by the Chilean community to sort of document through artifacts their experiences, their lived experiences of being political prisoners in Chile during the 1970s. And as the quote says here, these artifacts are now a testimony to the mental endurance of all of those who were political prisoners under the sort of general Pinochet military regime. So what we've done now, we've sort of converted that exhibition into an online exhibition, and we're also continuing to work with the Chilean community to actively collect new material in whether that be in both written and artifact formats. So that helps to again to create where possible a community-led, community-focused archive of sort of the lived experiences of this Chilean community. Oh yeah, and just to say that exhibition is also available on the Living Refugee Archive. So briefly, I wanted to talk about the importance of the role of narrative engagement within the concept of sort of living archives. So archives are home to a multitude of interacting stories, narratives, and testimonies. And as we've indicated perhaps already, some of these stories rise to the surface easily, and others are more hidden and harder to find. Thereby, opening the archive to life histories of vulnerable communities raise a number of key and important issues. These can include the role of engagement and how we engender trust with working with local communities and individuals to enable us to create a sense of participation and sort of shared engagement that can establish means that we can sort of co-create a sort of a living history. There's also representation, and how do we get my teeth back in? How do we communicate with communities and individuals this sentence has beat me today. How do we engage with communities and individuals who want their story to be represented within the archive? How do we ensure that our archive is representative of the community and the story that they want to be told? Linked to that, of course, is the role of ethics, and ensuring that any life history work undertaken is ethical with its approach, ensuring participants are informed of the process from the first engagement through the whole recording of the life history process, resulting in the archiving and accessibility of that material. We also need to be aware of our own situated practice as the archivist researcher, especially in relation to your position as the archivist in relation to the the range and scope of the outreach work that you're attempting to undertake. As this is nicely summed up by another quote by the authors Schwartz and Cook. We as archivists must continue to be aware that we wield power over those very records central to memory and identity formation. Through the active management of records, before they come to the archives, their appraisal and selection as archives, and afterwards their constantly evolving description, preservation, and use. Yeah. So just to give you an idea of how that works in practice for us, we've now undertaken several civic engagement and life history oral history projects on behalf of the archive. And in each of those cases, we've had to obtain official UEL research ethics approval for all of the projects that we've undertaken, especially when they will be working directly with communities outside of the university. This ensures that we meet stringent requirements for how participants are recruited for the projects and how they are informed about the project in terms of what their rights are, in terms of how their life histories are collected, stored, processed, archived, and subsequently made accessible. But through this work, we have attempted to focus on multimodal approaches to the collection of life histories. Thinking holistically, life histories are not just oral histories or written testimonies. They can be represented in other formats, including theatre, performance, dance, art, design, textiles, and objects. So, and as I say here, so disrupting traditional paradigms. So, I think very much for this law and Ware project, we want you to think about how you can how you choose which aspects of the project you want to focus on, and also then think about how you go about representing that theme or concept, the theme or sort of concept in whichever way you choose to work. I think what I said here, so understanding how silences can sometimes be as equally important as the material that you find within the archival space. As some participants may not want to share their story or have their experiences recorded as a part of an ongoing archive. Given that we will be focusing this year on the New Riverhead project, I think I wanted to take a couple of slides to talk about some of the civic engagement work we've undertaken locally here as part of our archival work. For a few years now, we've been working on a project called Take Lives, which is focused on the North Woolwich and Silvertown area of East London, which is immediately opposite our UEL Docklands campus. Just to give you some background, the project started as a community history focusing on the heritage of the now derelict former Tate and Lyle Sports and Social Club, which is sort of situated opposite the Tate and Lyle Sugar Refinery in Silvertown. This is a building that's had a long try and get my teeth back in. This was a project that was funded from the university's internal civic engagement fund, and which we've sort of continued to expand and sort of develop in several phases over the last few years. This is a quote from one of our colleagues who's worked on the project that I think kind of has a relevance to the work that we're doing with Law and Ware this year. Neighbourhoods are made up of many communities with precious memories in locals' hearts and minds. Spaces and places for residents to meet are often the glue that holds neighbourhoods together, bringing a sense of shared belonging and support. What is valued are places open in the evenings and the weekends to relax, socialise, and build local relationships in an organic way. I just thought that was a nice way to think about how we how different communities come together and in the context in a local environment. As part of the project, we created a sort of portable exhibition which we toured around the sort of local area over several years, looking at different aspects of the history of the area, from employment with the sort of Tate and Lyle sugar factory, through the sort of community histories, the history of the location itself, and the sort of various local festivals that took place in that particular area. So again, this could be something that you might want to think about for your how you might want to represent an aspect of your project. So I won't go into this for too much detail, but I will be sharing the slide with you, so you'll have this to look at. This is the actual Tate and Lyle Sports and Social Club building, which was established by Sir Henry Tate in 1887 as a secular social venue for sort of residents of Silvertown, and in particular to the workers at the Tate and Lyle sugar factory. The building itself included an 800-seat billiard room, and that 800-seat hall, billiard room, reading room, and 9 bathrooms. It all continued to play an active role in the sort of community history of Silvertown right throughout the 20th century, serving for a time as the sort of local Silvertown library. However, it's been largely derelict since 2016. But it was taken over for a time by the sort of Craftery Workshop, who were a series of this was a local art-based project who were keen to try and turn the building back into an open space. And but sadly, they were forced to leave about 2 years ago, and the ongoing history of the building is still very much uncertain. This was just a sort of very quick overview of the sort of community context in relation to the North Woodies and Silvertown. I won't spend too much time on this, but it's there if you want to come back to it at a later date. One of the interesting aspects that came out of the project was the importance of our work in terms of creating a space for the local people to be able to feel a sense of ownership and engagement with the project, and to feel comfortable sharing their voice and their stories, testimonies, and memories with us, which for many felt that their voices have been overlooked for quite some years. So the project was very much a multi-layered one, focusing on respecting and honouring the loss and sourcing the experience of the rich life of the original communities of North Woodies and Silvertown, and inspiring and educating the more recent residents of all ages in relation to the land on which they live. As part of the second year of the project, we also created the online Tape Live Trail, which worked directly with a local illustrator to create both a website, which you have the link here, and also an actual map which documented the lost pubs of the Royal Docks. This is the example of the actual map itself, which was completely hand drawn and documented the history of over 15 pubs, which had been a key aspect of the social life in this particular area, which now have either been knocked down or converted into sort of flats or other buildings. So again, this is perhaps another, through your practice looking at the new peer head, this might again be another idea about how you might want to represent an aspect of the work that you want to do. But very quickly, as I know we're sort of near the end, also I wanted just to flag up a new archive that's come to us fairly recently, which is the Newham Trackside Wall archive. The Newham Trackside Wall is a major new public artwork designed by the artist Sonia Boyce, which has been commissioned by Crossrail and curated by Art Projects. The artwork itself is a 1.9 kilometre long public artwork, which runs through Custom House, Silvertown, and North Woolwich in the London Borough of Newham. And is that, in fact, I think one of the longest ever public artworks ever commissioned in the UK. For the artwork, Sonia undertook over 170 oral history life. The artwork reaches over 170 stories contributed by local people, and Sonia Boyce had actually undertaken oral histories with many of those people, from which the ideas for this artwork was all put together. You can find out that there's more background on the project from this link in the slide. This is just a quick couple of slides so you can see how the artwork looks in situ. The wall itself was built to mask the sort of crossrail tracks which run between Canning Town and North Woolwich. So, and the artwork, like I say, the artwork runs the whole length of this 2 kilometre stretch of road. Okay, so I'll be sort of wrapping up now, but just wanted to specifically focus on the new riverhead for a couple of slides. You will see during the course of the next couple of weeks, hopefully, that much of the archival resources you may need for this project will be accessible through the House of Illustration and the London Metropolitan Archive. However, there are some useful sources for you available online, which might help with some background research. These include the Survey of London and the British History Online website, which can provide you with contextual background materials for the research that you're undertaking. I've also created a new selection of images that I've been able to find from these online resources as part of the new Riverhead resources page on our Living Refugee Archive. These are just a couple of the early images that I was able to find, which document the broader sort of the early history of the new Riverhead. And there's all of these are available on the website with further information as to their context and the actual images there are describing it. And it also includes some architectural plans documenting how the individual buildings were constructed. Here are a few key links which might be of interest for you to follow up and take a look at. Okay, so what I've done for all of you, and I think the plan is for us to have after this presentation, for you all to spend a few minutes looking at these archival materials that I've made available for you, and then we can have a question and answer session to think about your responses to these images, this material, and what has interested you and what has attracted you to different aspects of the material. So I've made all of these available on our Law and Ware online resources section of the Living Refugee Archive. The link is here, and I think it's already been shared with you by email as well. I've divided it into 7 different sets of material. So group 1 is the material on the new riverhead. Number 2 is material from our Voices from the Jungle virtual testimony archive, which documents testimonies from refugees in the Calais jungle. Number 3 is a selection of photographs from Gideon Mendel and his book from the Calais jungle. Number 4 is a link through to our Crafting Resistance exhibition, which focuses on the Chilean objects that we talked about earlier. Number 5 is the example of one of our oral history collections, the Voices of Kosovo in Manchester collection, which includes some of the actual oral histories accompanied by some exhibition images and some background information. Number 6 is some posters from our Hackney Empire collection, which give a more visual representation of the kind of performances and activities they were working on. And lastly is number 7, it's some individual narrative reflections focusing on the life of David Olawale, who was a refugee a refugee himself. Okay, and just to say, I'm sorry again I can't be with you in person today, but I'm more than happy for you to contact me by email as well, and I'm happy to make appointments to speak with any of you or to answer any questions that you may have. And I hope to be with you for the Q&A session on Thursday. These are just a few quick references that I've if you're interested in researching, looking into more detail in some of what we've talked about today. And that's it. Thank you very much for listening, and I very much hope that we'll be able to connect further. And I'm very much looking forward to seeing some of your work as the Law and Practice project starts to take shape. Thank you very much.